Welcome to Here Where You Belong, your go-to podcast for exploring belonging with your host and belonging expert, Dia Irby. We are thrilled to have you join us. Together, we'll dive into the depths of what it means for each of us to find our own place in the world, whether it's within our communities, our relationships, or within ourselves. Today's episode is meant to inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. So grab a cozy spot and settle in. Welcome to Here Where You Belong.
Hey there, Belonger. Thanks for joining on Here Where You Belong. I wanted to give a trigger warning. My guest today is going to be sharing about her experiences of physical and sexual abuse and bullying. And if that triggers you, I invite you to skip this week or skip to the middle of the episode and see the ending. She is a victor. She came out on the other side and she shares that. So just be warned. Thanks for coming. Bye now. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Here Where You Belong. I am so excited about my guest today. We were online friends, then we met in person, and Kathy James is just an amazing, inspiring person. Let me give you a little bit of her bio because there's so much about her. She's a resilience speaker and author and a suicide prevention educator. Drawing from her battles, Kathy passionately promotes mental health awareness, education, and fosters resiliency, equipping her audience with the tools they need to cultivate inner strength and lead fulfilling lives. Kathy has shared her story and insights globally, and we're honored to have her here for many well-recognized platforms, including TEDx, her Community Now magazine, Project Management Institute, and Speak events, to name a few. Now will be added to the list. In addition to speaking, Kathy is a certified memoir and resiliency author, a certified QPR suicide prevention instructor, which we might want to get into QPRs, and the CEO of She Shed Media Group, a firm that supports elevated heart-centered leadership, increased audience engagement, and program improvement through training, advising, and the development of digital content and tools. She resides in Virginia, and when she's not on stage or training or writing, she dedicates her time to her family and to young adult mentorship, embodying her motto, if I can win my fight with the odds stacked against me, so can you. Whoa, welcome, Kathy. I hope people, their cameras and their audios are not burning up because of the hot Kathy James in the house. Oh, did I cover it all? What else do you want to say?
No, I appreciate you so much. And I'm so happy that we met and that we got to meet in person and that we're finally here. So I'm so excited.
Yes, it has. I mean, your busy schedule and all that you're doing but we persevered. We didn't give up and you're here. And we're going to talk about belonging. Now, if you want to share a little bit about how belonging wasn't in your life and maybe how you found it, share as much of your story as we have time. Or, of course, we're going to talk about it. They could buy your book and hear a whole lot more, but go ahead and share with us.
Sure. So I think that it's probably good to start with where it all began, my childhood, right? So growing up, my home was prone to violence. I was subjected to lifestyle of my family, who were known alcoholics and drug addicts. And as time went on, I found myself subjected to my grandmother's mental illness and her frustrations, as did many of us that were teenagers. So today, we might, the best way that I can describe it, I was being bullied at home, but then I found myself subjected to bullying at school as well. So as you can imagine, you feel ostracized, you feel isolated, right? Now I did have good friends at that time, but I was also further isolated when I started to take on some of those characteristics and those traits mirroring the behaviors of my home. So my friends who were good friends and their parents started to pull away further rather than leaning in. So a lot of that it just continued to further isolate. And I gravitated towards a completely different friend group and found myself becoming the bully that I once loathed.
Survival. It was for survival. And I'm sure it had something to do with not feeling like you belong somewhere. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to make this person be someone that people have to accept me because I'm bullying them. I'm
Hmm.
guessing. I don't know.
Yeah. So a part of it was a sense of control, having control in an area that I felt that I had, because I didn't have control in other areas of my life. And yeah, I was getting attention by being the bully. Even if it was the bullies themselves, it was some sort of positive feeling for me. So I felt like I was belonging, but it was belonging in all the wrong ways.
Do you recognize that when you see people or when you're around people, can you recognize what they're going through or relate to it?
Oh, absolutely. I have a deeper empathy for others in all walks of life because of my past.
Mm.
And I still have bias. I still realize that I have moments where I assume or prejudge, just like anyone else. I think
Oh,
that's the
I was
human
going to
part
say,
of me.
you wouldn't be a person if you did.
Right, right. But I am much quicker to recognize it and to adjust and to try to rectify it and do better. But
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. There have been moments even at work in a work conversation, you don't even see the person's face, and I've picked up on certain cues in conversation where you can hear the frustration in someone's voice, and if it's consistent and out of character, it makes me wonder what they're going through at that moment.
And or at home.
Or
Yeah.
right,
Right.
right, whether in that time of and whether in their life, right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If you were to help someone learn how to be attentive so that we could be more aware and reach out, could you give us some tips, maybe three things to look for?
Okay, yeah.
Not
So
that I'm putting you on the spot, but I think
no,
we.
it's fine. I think this is great because we have to learn what it looks like when someone is hurting or depressed or having a rough go at it, and whatever it is, grief, and what does it look and sound like? And for me, I'll share another personal story. um, I went through a very hard time uh, after my ex-husband passed away, and my boys and I were having very challenging moments with each other. They were trying to find themselves, they were trying to grieve, and we didn't know how to handle it. And it was pretty bad. It was getting to the point where I didn't know what I was going to do. I had not processed the grief myself. Although he was my ex-husband, we became really good friends. We were still very, very close. We co-parented really well. And I went through some dark moments. And looking back at those moments, there were signs everywhere, right? I started withdrawing from my friends, and my friends took that to mean they took it personally, and they didn't realize that I was going through something, and to lean in and to ask, is everything okay? Right. I started becoming very, very short tempered with not just my children, not just my friends, but even in the public. I remember becoming very, very short with an individual at a Chipotle, in front of my son, right? I was the Karen in that moment. I hate that, but that's the best way that I could describe what I was going through in that moment. And those around me weren't really seeing the clues or putting those together, but those are absolutely. If someone is short tempered all of a sudden, and it's more consistent, if they're withdrawing, if they're not just from social activities, but even having a hard time in school or in work, those are warning signs. Those They can easily be dismissed as a bad attitude. She's having a bad day. We're allowed to have bad days, but when it's consecutive or consistent, and you see that it's ongoing, something is off. And I
Right.
think it's 100% okay to start asking the questions.
So in your intro that I mentioned that you are a certified QPR suicide person. What
Yes,
is that?
yes.
Expound on that.
Yep. QPR is question, persuade, refer. Question is exactly what it is. If you recognize something, you ask. And it's not just asking, um, are you okay? If you feel like, so it's good to ask if you're okay and letting them know that you are there for them. But when it comes to the topic of suicide, if you feel like someone might be suicidal, you need to be direct. You're not going to put the thought in someone's head, because if they're thinking about suicide, that thought came
Already
well
there.
before you did, right?
Yeah.
So learning how to ask the right questions and then persuade the individual to seek out support and help, and then referring them to the right help, having the right resources in your back pocket to be able to help them, including the 988 crisis line. It's an amazing resource on the fly when you have no other resource.
Repeat that. The
988. It's a national suicide prevention crisis line, available 24/7 via phone and text. And if you're online, you can also chat with someone, and they are well equipped to take a phone call from someone who's in crisis, or a phone call from someone who needs advice to help someone who is in crisis.
That's helpful. So do you have any statistics about where we are with suicides in America today?
I do. And I apologize. It's been a long day. Bear with
No
me
problem.
1 second. I'm going to pull out a few for you. So suicide, if we're talking about youth, it's the second leading cause of death among college students and youth. And depression in college students is at a 70% increased risk of death compared to those without depression. So if they already have depression, you know that they have depressive symptoms, the chances of death by suicide increases by 70%.
Wow.
Yeah. One person dies by suicide every 11 minutes.
Of any age?
At any age. Think about that. That's our snooze button. That's our snooze button when we're trying to get up in the morning.
How much does that rate of suicide relate to belonging or lack thereof?
So
if someone feels like they belong somewhere,
yep.
Does
so
that help?
the chances of someone committing suicide decreases, and I don't know the statistic right off the bat, decreases when someone approaches them, if someone speaks to them and provides some sort of form of hope. So if that's very telling to me, because a lot of times people are really just waiting for someone hoping someone will say something to them. And there have been instances where individuals have actually said, they'll actually say, if XYZ happens, then I won't. Or if XYZ doesn't happen, I'm going to end my life. So there are instances where a lot of times they will leave some sort of clue. Not always. I recognize sometimes there are moments where they had a traumatic event happen and we didn't see any warning signs. Typically there are some sort of warning sign, but I understand that there are instances where there were none, right? Or we didn't recognize them because we didn't know. And we can't change what we don't know, right? We're not responsible for what we don't know. We're responsible for what we do know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, right. In that vein of thought, we are responsible to make ourselves aware of what to look for.
I absolutely agree. 100%.
Which is why I was asking, how can we tell so that we know what to look for?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So
there are a lot of resources. QPR offers a training they're called gatekeepers, and it helps to recognize the warning signs, and not just the warning signs. What are some of the triggers, right? What are some life changes that might increase the chances? Now, these life experiences does not mean that the person's going to want to end their life by suicide, but they absolutely do increase. And then it shares different resources that can be applied to help as well. But there's also so that would be QPR Institute, but there's also NAMI, National Association Mental Health Institute, NAMI, NAMI. There's ASFP. It is for grieving individuals that now they do both. They suicide awareness, but they do have support groups for those that have been left behind. They've experienced death by suicide in their of a loved one.
That's
so there's a lot of resources.
That has to be a very, very, what could I have done? Why didn't I see it? All the guilt. Did I cause this? All the guilt. That's got to be
Yeah.
support for that. So tell me a little bit about how you or why you started your community of resiliency, and how's it doing tell us about it.
Right. So United Resilience Community was birthed out of my desire to pull together those that truly have a heart that are gravitated to want to support the efforts that I in the community that I've sought out through suicide prevention, communal resilience development, and youth trauma awareness. So the three, right? If individuals that I run into or that are my friends, family, peers want to get on board, they can support in this way. But then there's that, let's pull these individuals that are passionate just as much as I am about these areas together and put our minds together and our efforts together, because we don't have to do it alone. We're stronger together. And then I wanted to take it a step further and provide a safe space for those that wanted to develop in those areas or needed some support in those areas, so that out of those individuals that are passionate about it, we could collectively help those individuals. So it'll evolve over time. And we're very much still a small group, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't need a large group because
online?
I think.
Is it online? Is it a Facebook group or just an online?
So we absolutely do meet virtually through Zoom every month. Our members they have priority access to any type of training that I might develop, any sort of event that I might hold or might partner with. Where I intend to have an annual event every November. So my members will have priority in helping me collaborate with that, but also in some sort of discounted ticket price towards that. Mm-hmm. I'm actually right now working with 10 individuals where we're going to be doing interviews similar to a podcast, but they're going to be sharing their stories of resilience for inspiration for my community.
Awesome.
So they'll have front row seat to guests that come in, and they'll have opportunities if they are nonprofit or business to also sponsor some of the events or the projects. For instance, I plan to have one major impact project a year, in addition to smaller projects throughout the year, etc. My big impact project this year is, and as you know, I'm really good with video, and I am a creative. This year's project, and it's probably going to be ongoing, is I'm developing animated suicide prevention videos. And each video story follows a real suicide experience. Mm. So an individual who has contemplated and came very close to death by suicide, right? Or someone who has lost someone to suicide. Uh-huh. So right now I have 3 that they're all about 90% done. But I'm utilizing Powtoon Videos, which is an animated subscription, and I've got various stories. I've got one gentleman that told his story where he lost 3 loved ones in a very short period of time to suicide. It's a heartbreaking interview, to say the least.
Yes.
And it's challenging to take their stories and to depict it in a way that honors them and honors their loved one. And so I'm extremely honored to be able to do that. Sorry.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. The work that you're doing is amazing. And I'm so excited about all that you're going to make a difference in the world. We're going to be right back, give you an opportunity to go find some Kleenex, and be right back and talk about your book and your favorite quotes. See you in a minute.
Thank you.
Hey there! Isn't my guest amazing? So glad you joined us today. In this world that often feels disconnected, building community and fostering belonging are essential. That's why I created this podcast, to bring inspiring people to you, to encourage you to create that sense of belonging and community, no matter where you are. If you're being blessed by my guest, and we have some more, like, subscribe, and share this podcast. You know who needs to hear this. Stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you belong. Now, back to our amazing guest. We're back. Yay. Yes. Oh, Kathy is making a difference in this world, bringing together people and helping them know that they belong and that they matter, that their story can touch and reach other people. And she's making it available. And that's so beautiful. As I mentioned, Kathy wrote a book. So proud of her bestseller. She did it right. My Fight Against the Odds, a training guide to thrive despite adversity. Tell us a little bit about writing it and a teaser so people will want to find it on Amazon and buy their copy.
Yep. It might not look like much because it's a thin book, but it took me 2.5 years to write that sucker because it is a memoir. So it shares childhood experiences,
Deep stuff.
Yeah,
and you did not hold back anything. It's authentic, it's real, and it's raw.
I was going to say the same thing. It's raw. So there were many times where I would write a chapter and I would get emotional, a proud emotional, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about this memory in a very long time. There were moments where I had to pause and say, have I really processed this? Have I really, come through this? And for the most part, yes. And then there were moments where I had to, get real with it, right? Face it and remember all the things that I learned in therapy and talk it through with my husband and my friends and get through it. And then you'd have writer's block and all the things that everyone talks about. And then there was moments where I had an editor and she fell sick. And so there was a pause. And then I found another editor and she was amazing. But, then there was a shift there. And then I learned a whole bunch about, formatting and self-publishing. And so when it finished, it was a bittersweet for sure.
Labor of love. Are you ready to help other people write their memoirs now?
So say that again.
Are you ready to help someone else write their memoirs?
I'm ready to give some advice, but I don't know. I'm not any better. I can absolutely. There have been plenty. There have been plenty of people that have come to me to ask for help, and I've been able to give them some really good advice, and so I'm thankful for that. There have been people that have asked me, "What's the next book?" I think I know what the next book is. Within the book, I have 9 building blocks of resilience, and all of those building blocks relate to personal adversity. It can be related to, even if you don't relate to my story, it can be related to professional building blocks as well, because I use those same building blocks to overcome my lack of ability to read well and to actually start a career for myself, whereas I was bouncing between jobs at one point. I probably had so many jobs that I couldn't even keep count because I was just rinsing through them so quickly. But today, here I am. I'm a business systems analyst, trainer, ops guru, and speaker, and I'm involved in the community. I would have never dreamed that, right? Never would have realized that I would have been able to get here in those moments, right? But I did. There was a moment in my path where I absolutely was. There was a shift in my journey, and I held on to it and by the skirt, and something inside of me shifted, and I became hungry for growth. And there were many detours along the way, but I absolutely am thankful for those individuals that came into my life at various points of my life and my journey to help me to where I am today. Hence why I do what I do. It's my way of paying it forward.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a good, easy read. Well, not easy. Parts of it were easy to read, hard to read, if you know what I mean. Well, yep. You know what I mean.
It's a quick read.
Let's talk about your a couple of your quotes. The one that you use in your work is the one that we kind of already alluded to. Behavior is the language of trauma. Students and peers will show you before they tell you that they're in distress. Like you mentioned, noticing that a coworker seemed stressed out from their language. Do you want to expound on that anymore?
Yep. So I chose that one because in my TEDx talk, Zooming in to Make a Difference, I share my experiences and about the bullying. And there was one particular experience that I don't allude to as much in the TEDx, but I talk about it briefly. But I remember I got into a physical altercation in school.
Oops.
Right. By a young woman who was much heavier than me, who was known to be someone you didn't want to mess with. She didn't bully me, but she bullied others. And one particular day, I found myself being bullied. And I took up for myself, and not in a major way, but I took up for myself, and I found myself pinned between her and the bleachers in gym class. Broken nose, sitting in front of the assistant principal's office, and found myself expelled from school and sent to an alternative school with other known misfits. Now, I say that because, and I bring up this situation because my assistant principal did not recognize the warning signs. My teachers did not recognize the warning signs. I was even involved in youth ministry for a time, and the youth leaders did not recognize the warning signs. I later found myself in foster care. So somewhere along the line, someone saw the red flags. And this was after I was already running away, skipping school, became pregnant at the age of 16. I was on my way. I was self-sabotaging. I was mirroring the behaviors in the home. And I was in foster care for all of 8 months and was returned home. And I love my family, but it was toxic, and it's still toxic to this day. So I use that particular quote because it's very important in a young person's life to recognize the warning signs. Bullies don't bully for no reason. And while we absolutely should focus on helping those that are being bullied, we also need to rethink how we are approaching the bullies. Are we isolating them further, or are we going to ask the right questions and provide them the support and the therapy that they might need, and what support in whatever means it might be necessary? Isolating me and my other peers in a school known for misfits was not the answer. Putting me in a detention class, isolating me from my classmates, not the answer, in my opinion. Do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. But I definitely think that we should sit down and reevaluate and provide ask the right questions and provide the right resources to our troubled youth.
Exactly. So just telling somebody, stop acting like that, that's not going to work, is it?
That's not going to work.
Awesome. Right. Well, your personal quote, and we've already mentioned it, is, if I can win my fight with the odds stacked against me, so can you.
Absolutely.
In our last few minutes, what do you have to say about that?
I think it speaks for itself. If you get the book, or if you watch the TEDx and you get any of the information about my story, you'll understand what I'm talking about as far as the odds that are stacked against me. I only touched the surface, and Dia, she's read the book. She knows what I'm talking about. And even the book doesn't share everything, sure, right? But I remember sitting in my home watching a woman speak on the television, share her story. And it was a doozy. And here she was standing in front of a magnitude of people, men and women, sharing her story, and they were inspired. I was inspired. And I remember in that moment was when I first had the desire to share. I didn't know how to share my story. I didn't even know how to share my story, and my story wasn't even finished yet. I had just started my healing journey. I had just started to develop in a new way. But I knew that I wanted to get to a point where I would share my story and inspire hope in someone else. And I remember thinking to myself, if she can do it, I can do it. And if I can do it, and if she can do it, you can do it.
That is so true, and such a good message to end on. There's so many people that need to be seen, that need to be asked the right questions, and inspired to know that they can fight the fight and come out on the other side. Wow. I knew this was going to be a good time. You had me in tears a couple of times here, and I'm always upbeat, but yes, get Kathy's book, My Fight Against All Odds. Go online and find her TEDx talk. It's inspiring, and zoom in to make a difference. You can. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you. Any
Yes.
final words? We've covered a lot. You've said your messages. Any final farewell message you'd like to give the people?
If any of this resonates with you at all, even a smidgen, and you don't have any idea where to start, I open myself up to be that resource for you, and am happy to have a conversation, happy to welcome you into my community. I talked about the community. The community is free. It's free to be a member. It's free to join. You don't have to join. There are so many different avenues that we could go with this. There's, if anything, just to be someone to be a listening ear. I welcome myself. I welcome you to contact me. If you're in the States, outside of the States, I will go out of my way to help you find local resources if I don't have them already.
I totally believe that. We'll put all of your contact information in the show notes. And wow, thank you again, Kathy. It's been a pleasure. Well, powerhouse. All right. Okay, listen, friends, we're going to be back again with yet another amazing person on Here Where You Belong. Can't wait to see you then. Stay true to yourself, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Here Where You Belong. We hope today's episode has inspired you to embrace the beauty of belonging in your own life. Remember, no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. Join us again next time for more insightful conversations and heartwarming stories. Until then, stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember that you belong.